Good morning, viewers. My name is Tahir, and today I'm going to represent the presentation, which are based on the International Human Resources Management. And because of the COVID-19, so we are presenting the presentation by online by Zoom recording. So I hope the viewers will get interested or this meeting or the presentation I'm going to represent. So I'm a student of the Bachelor of Human Resources Management, which is my final year. So this is the presentation based on the module which is International Human Resources Management. Okay, so these are the table of contents. Number one is the host country, overview of the country and the company, before challenges and interrelationships identified. And number two is the Morgan's 3D IHRM, conceptual understanding and diagram will be there. Later on, I'll present about that. So number three is staffing approaches, which will be, I'm going to explaining about the staffing strategies in international destinations. So number four is individual perspective and additional job responsibility for expertise as per organizational culture. Okay, so the overview host country, which is given are the some factors are there. So which one by one I'm gonna explain with you on base of the presentation that I made. So number one is the political factors. A stable Malaysian government with high corruption. This is in the public sector. Okay, so number two is the economic factors. Malaysia is a middle-income country with promising automobile sales among its masses. So number three, sociocultural factors. Malaysia is a multicultural company with diverse ethnicities like Malays, Chinese, and Indians. Number four, technology factors. Increase in the internet penetration rate and number of smartphone users create scope of digital marketing strategies. And number one is the legal and environment factor. Malaysia adheres to a common law system under Employment Act, which was by 1955. The country is blessed with environmental resources, flora and fauna. So here you can see the diagram. Okay, so this is by the political stability index, which are 2.7. And here you can see the corporate tax rate, which are 24%. And here the native density, which is 60%. And the crime rate is very high, 73%. And the internet penetration rate, which is 88%. Okay, so these are the impact on Volvo. So the power distance, 100. Malaysia has a high power distance compared to Sweden that can cause a culture shock for HR policymakers. Okay, so you can see on the other side, uncertainty avoidance. The score for uncertainty avoidance is fairly similar. Both countries avoid taking risk in a fair amount. Okay, so individualism, 26, Malaysia has a collective society that may create barriers in ethical implications, teamwork, and operation management involved. So long-term orientation, 100, Malaysian labor laws term for its native culture that can impose boundaries on Volvo's operations in headquarters in Sweden. So masculinity, 100, Malaysian masculine society is a stark opposite of Sweden's feminine society. Thus, Malaysian workplace will be highly competitive. So intelligence, 57, Malaysia lacks in intelligence in comparison to Sweden. Hence, employees will expect leader to be perfect as per great man theory. So here is you can see the diagram, which is given explained by the Malaysia and comparison by Sweden. So here you can see power distance would be 100 out of 31, and individualism would be 26 by 21, and masculinity, which is 50 by 5, and insanity avoidance, which is 36 by 29, long-term orientation, 41 by 52%. So intelligence, which is Malaysia 57 by Sweden 78%. So these are the difference between Malaysia and Sweden. Okay, about the company Volvo, the total sales was being in the year 2016 and 2015 and 2018, 19, and 20. Here you can see the comparison between Sweden and Malaysia. Okay, so you can see the diagram, which was 2016 was really, I think it was very low. At that time, it was just only the difference between 1%. Okay, so on the 2017, it increased, I think, very less. Okay, so in 2018, it jumps into 1.5. In 2019, it was almost been there, but in 2020, because of the pandemic, it decreased. You can see by here. So that was the total sales, and the global supply demand reduced with the outbreak of the pandemic in March 2020. Volvo is a Swedish car manufacturer company expanding in Malaysia. The core activities include production, sale, and distribution of cars and heavy-duty vehicles. The sales for both host and target countries shows a similar trends in sales. So you can see the huge difference because of the pandemic. So the Volvo company has facing the problem. Okay, so here's analysis of the challenges. So outbreak of the global pandemic, which are the spread of coronavirus, has distributed global supply chains, emergency regulations, and delay logistic of Volvo from Sweden to Malaysia. So strict national legislation under Company Act 1965. The director will have more strict and accountability to safeguard stakeholder interest than that of in Sweden. So that was the national law they produced. And if you see is the institutional perspective, which are the and the contrasting perspective of the industry, automobile industry in Sweden is almost next to enter. However, in Malaysia, personal cars are considered luxuries. This can reduce sales by at least 12%. If you go back, you can see here the corporate culture, difference in power culture. The corporate culture of Sweden and Malaysia are vastly different. That will cause disparities in HR policies for human resources management of Volvo in Sweden and in Malaysia. So, interrelations. Interrelationships. Cross-culture management. Okay, so number one is the cross-culture management, and number two is the comparative human resource, and number three is the industrial relations, and number four is human resources management aspects in global firms. So number one is the cross-culture management. Cross-culture management in Volvo includes considering the influence of societal culture on management practices to culture orientations of expertise, managers, and employees. So comparative human resources the performance of the employee in all branches, irrespective of the governments and performance. So number three is industrial relations. So embarrassing diversity in the Malaysian target markets by respecting the power distance is an effective way to earn industrial relations in the positive right. And number four one is the HRM aspects involve aspects of HRM involve include recruitment for targeting market using local talents to fill the vacancies. So Morgan's 3D HRM content hero, like between 1986, state international human resources management is in interplay among three distinct dimensions. These dimensions are human resource activities, employees, types, countries of operation. In broad terminology, international human resource includes activities like recruitment and staffing. However, international HRM works with employees originating from within a single national boundary. So here's the content here. Human resources management is pivotal to expertise program for successful employees maintenance. HR initiatives are implemented by Volvo to accomplish the strategy modification when an expertise is changing the geography of their regular workplace and is introducing them to a new organization structure. HR initiatives are incorporated within Volvo overall human resources strategy. Okay, here are the diagrams with the types of employees and the countries. Okay, so complete Morgan's 3D HRM. So here's Morgan defines international human resources management as the interplay among three dimensions: human resources activities, type of employees, countries of operations. Okay, that's very important point. So staffing approaches, it's by step, but you have to consider this very importantly, like the one is the factor and policies and constraints and availability and appraisal. So in factor, you can see here legal factors, labor market trends, national minimum wages, power distance in the policies, region-centric anti-harassment policies, polycentric equal employment policies, intercentric employment classification policy, geocentric work health and safety policy, and constraints recruitment from local communities, knowledge gap, culture shock, language and perception barriers, ethical gray zones, and the availability of remote working facilities, 24/7 working shifts and their black patterns, scheduling of availability over time and absenteeism. So a person 360-degree feedback, behavior, ensured rating scales, psychological appraisals, human resources, cost accounting methods. Okay, Herbert parameter approaches. Number one is the EPRG typology. Parameter approach atomic influence cluster in multinational companies like Volvo, with globalization influencing work. Reliance on developed approach requires a boost. Conceptual framework, the EPRG topology acts as the conceptual framework for allocation of employees in a cluster, generates combinations for single components during their individualized internationalization to Volvo. A concentric strategy, Volvo can enlarge its firms in Malaysia target markets that must not be restricted by employee search for critical positions driven by ethnocentric strategies apply. Employing local communities, the strategy can be adequate with local staff in important positions. The development of recruited employees may render new opportunities for establishing demographic representations driven by local market knowledge. So these are the Herbert Primrose approaches. So these are the individual perspective. Like you can see here, responsibilities and job roles and their careers, compensation and expertise. Constraint home government. Sweden has a highly liberalized, competitive, and open market economy. A majority of companies in Sweden are market oriented and privately owned, always combined with strong state welfare, including payment transfer involving around 60% of annual GDP. So COVID-19 regulations, you can see how increased supply chain risks, currency deficits, economy, and national laws. I thank you a lot for viewers to listening my presentation and looking into it. I hope you guys will like my presentation that I represent to you. Thanks a lot.